welcome to the Design-Based Learning Podcast.
I am Mike.
I'm Henry.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Yes, Lunar New Year.
It's the year of tiger.
Year of the tiger. Are you a tiger?
No, my mom is a tiger, actually.
Okay. Yeah. Tiger mom. Anyway.
I hope my mom doesn't see this now.
So, what do we start with today?
Again, Friday.
Yeah, Friday.
What do we do on Friday?
We have coffee.
We have coffee.
Well, we have coffee every day, but Friday we have coffee and we talk. And I guess somebody else came up to you, another teacher.
Yeah, something popped up this week. It's about classroom management problems.
Okay, so.
The teacher came up to me and was like, "Hey, I tried, telling kids the school standard procedures, like the rules that we need to follow and stuff like that, but it didn't really work. Like kids don't really feel like doing it."
He was telling them all the rules of the school, and they didn't want to follow.
Yeah. So we're just trying to look into that problem. And what
what
was the problem? Do you think? Yeah, I would say, I think. When I try to understand his problem, I think that there's lack of ownership for the kid at that time. So the teacher tell me about these rules, but it doesn't mean anything to me.
So you told him it's because the kids don't have ownership of the rules.
The kids don't have ownership.
What did he say after that?
Oh, right. So how do we make ownership for kids then?
How do we make kids own rules to control themselves?
Or make it fun. How do we make them come up with their own tools, their own rules?
That's fun. Okay, so. What did you suggest?
So we suggested something called negative brainstorming.
Negative brainstorming.
Yeah.
So what is negative brainstorming?
So basically you need to prepare this to the most extreme worst case scenario.
Okay.
All right? And you're trying to flip that story afterwards. So by going through the extremes, the negatives, you might see some highlights or positiveness in there.
So for this teacher, when you said negative brainstorming, how did you tell him, okay, this is what you need to do?
So I would say maybe in your class teacher time, try to run this activity with kids. So trying to flip that ownership from being teacher saying to kid, but actually kid own the process of creating those class rules together as a class. And everyone is part of the ownership of creating those ideas. So how do we do that? We just say, imagine this classroom. What is the worst classroom environment or behaviors we can have in this classroom?
Okay, so think of all the behaviors that would make this classroom like
chaotic,
difficult, terrible.
Yeah, kids do like that actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how do you do that?
So give post-its, maybe just 1 to 2 post-its for each kid, and then they can write down like what's the worst classroom environment going to look like, and then they can put all the worst case scenarios onto the whiteboard in one category. And remember, negative brainstorming is about flipping that negative to positive.
Okay.
So now we can just pick one of them.
For example?
What is it? What's the example?
Well, I mean, most likely you'll pick one that's like respect. None of the students respect the teacher, so they do whatever they want. They don't listen. Okay.
Yeah. And then once you pick that and ask students, what are the positives we can turn this from? And obviously, if you can't respect the teacher, it will be respect the teacher. But one very important facilitation note here is to make students understand why they need to respect the teacher. So what do they do at this point?
So you have to figure out, okay, why do we need to respect the teacher? So if we don't respect the teacher, what happens? So there's lack of understanding. So even the students won't respect each other. So you'll have a lot of different problems resulting. So you have to say, okay, now we should respect the teacher. Then you ask the question, why? And then they'll come up with their answers, right?
And that's the reason. That's the ownership on why they need to follow this rule, and it's coming from the kid.
Yeah.
And so to make it more tangible for kids to follow, we know that there are lots of like negative points on the board. We can just filter down into top 5 kind of like class rules or top 10 class rules we want to follow.
Yes.
And you can see the difference here. Now it's not one way that I tell you this.
Yeah.
These are the 10 rules, but now it's students creating their 10 rules that is relatable to them.
Yeah, so they pick up the top 5 negative behaviors and they try to solve each one of those.
Yeah.
Okay. Did it work for that teacher when you told him to do it this way?
Yeah, it worked in the class teacher time as well. So it's a great tool for class teachers to give it a try into their classroom as well. And
it's also another way of generating ideas. Think of it backwards. So this one.
Yeah.
Any other ideas for using this negative brainstorming for design?
Actually, negative brainstorming is an ideation tool.
Okay.
But I was just trying to flip this tool to put it in how to use, but it worked. So I just want to share it to you guys.
Okay.
But obviously, we can share what really it is for. in terms of a design project.
So it's a negative brainstorming is a design tool.
It is a design tool,
Okay.
yeah. So when do you use it in the design process?
Well, whenever you have problems generating ideas, so instead of thinking of, I'm trying to think of positives, let's think of negatives, right? So it's a quick way to just figure out how to get a lot of different ideas. So sometimes when we're trying to think positive, I guess the one way is to think negative, and then we probably come up with more ideas.
Yeah. So for example, there's a real project from a teacher as well.
Yeah.
She wants to look at insomnia, people that couldn't sleep.
Okay.
So
What's a negative,
what's
right?
a negative?
So let's think of how many ways we can keep people from sleeping, right?
Yeah.
So
Keep them awake all night.
keep them awake all night. So
Yeah,
like
so-
playing loud music, shining lights in their eyes.
Drink 10 cups of coffee before they go to sleep.
Drink 10 cups of coffee before sleep. Play video games all night. What else? Play loud music. What else is there? So that you just generate all these ideas, and then
And then you're trying to flip it. So for example, games.
yeah,
If the negative is a gaming platform that can keep her up all night, we know that if we are going to create a game for the person, it should have a limitation of time. So we know that maybe the person can only play for an hour, and then the game will shut off. You can't come back on again.
okay.
So
Or a game that will help them sleep.
or a game that can help the person to sleep. So by picturing the worst case, you can find some good insights that you can use in
That's
there.
right. So like instead of loud music, they listen to soft music.
Yeah, like yoga,
That's
peaceful
like
sort
if
of
it's
music.
like bright lights,
Yeah.
then you should have no lights.
In terms of intense exercise, we can do a bit of yoga
Yeah.
or some stretching exercise for them to go to sleep easier, or meditation as well. So these are the insights that are coming in. So it's great that if you don't have a lot of time in the lesson as well, negative brainstorming can quickly capture the pain points
Yes.
and then help them to move on to the positives. So
Positive.
sometimes you might not be able to do the whole design cycle, and this is a great tool to
Yeah.
just get specific on.
So just to generate ideas really quickly. Sometimes the negative works better than the positive.
Yeah, it really works sometimes, yeah. So
Anything else?
lastly, it's the lesson planning.
What do you mean lesson planning?
So remember, teachers are designers as well. So this is a great tool for designers.
Okay. Okay.
So what's the example that we can
Well,
how
okay,
lesson
let-
planning, negative brainstorming
Lesson
work?
planning. So, for example, you're planning a lesson, and the end point of the lesson is a presentation. So the students have to present their project or the design. So at the end, when you're planning your lesson, like, okay, what are the worst things that can happen if I'm planning this lesson for a design and presentation? What's the worst thing that can happen where it won't work? So then I can backtrack. So like, students are too shy, don't want to talk, the project's not logical, they don't have good reasons to support their project, they don't have a good design. All of these things can come up, right?
Yep. So what you could do is, again,
Okay.
flip that conversation again. So
Give me
students
one
are really
example.
students are really shy, for example.
Okay.
So how do I make this person less shy, student less shy in the presentation? Maybe I will give her team support instead of doing an individual presentation. Maybe it's a team presentation, so they feel like there's friends and people backing her up.
Yeah.
And she'll be more confident to speak.
Okay.
And what about the other one to
Well,
solve?
probably just make them more comfortable. So sometimes they're shy because they don't feel comfortable. So maybe just to sit down. No need to present standing up. Sit down and use a more limited audience platform.
So you can see that by imagining the worst scenarios, it creates some sort of an insight. And what lesson tools you can use to solve that will be how your lesson will come up with.
How about if there's no logic? Now, this is not a logical.
So just the kid mumbling, like not giving.
It's
a
not
good
mumbling.
point.
They're talking, just not logical.
You can't see the point of the.
Yeah, you can't see the point.
Yeah, so maybe it's simple as we can prepare a storyboard canvas for them, so that students can structure
What do
their
you mean by
presentation.
storyboard canvas?
As easy as 8 post-its. Try to explain your idea in 8 single post-its and try to put a story around it, and then that can help the students be more structured in the way of they present instead of just going there present out of nothing. You can see us as well. We have some sort of a storyboard here to help us structure our conversation.
Correct.
Yeah. So the
The
whole
idea
idea.
is to be prepared mentally. So if you know what could go wrong, prevent it as much as possible. So your lesson planning things works better.
So whenever I do a workshop or whatever, I always think about the worst scenario.
Yeah.
I play the devil cards a lot.
Yeah.
Is there a problem here? What are the worst scenarios when people are doing this? And now I know what can be done to elevate that experience for the students.
Correct. To think. So in any lesson plan or any design-based thing, sometimes it's better to think opposite, right? So you generate more ideas by thinking opposite rather than trying to be very positive, and you sometimes hit a wall.
Yeah. So whenever you're stuck, give this tool a try.
Yeah.
And it can really help you to generate quick ideas very quickly.
Definitely. So it's sometimes the fast taking 2 steps back is better than taking 1 step forward.
Yeah. Probably we need to ask ourselves a question as well. What is the worst thing that could happen on this podcast?
I have no idea.
And then we need to flip that conversation afterwards.
Everyone unsubscribes and unlike.
But give us a like though.
Give us a like and subscribe, please.
All right. See you next week.
Next week.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.